Hello and welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with Mr. McDonald. We are having a look at Edexcel Paper 3 USA Problems at Home and Abroad, and this is the precise component that looks at the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s and the war in Vietnam in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Okay, so let's have a look at our question of the day. Today we are having a look at, we're going to start with 3A, then we'll do 3B, then 3C, then 3D. And our first question is, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case in 1954, 8 marks. Okay, so similar to other questions, this has got 3 components. Let's start by looking at the command phrase. And our command phrase in this instance is how useful. Alright, what that means is you must analyse the sources. Okay, right, the second part of our question is, I would say, maybe the third most important part in this particular question, and that is the focus. And as you probably worked out, the focus of our question is the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case. So, do you want to spend time now annotating the word focus with what knowledge you have about Brown versus Topeka? Press pause. I'll see you in about 30 seconds. See you in a mo. Okay, welcome back. Right, so I'm just going to start with my knowledge. Right, so obviously schools were segregated, weren't they? Under Jim Crow. It also made the black Americans, they felt inferior, as they were receiving, or some black Americans were receiving a lesser quality education because of the facilities, or maybe because of the teaching. Okay? Right, so what was the whole point of this? Well, this was Oliver Brown and the NAACP challenging separate but equal in schools. And what happens? What's the outcome of that? Well, it desegregated. Oh. It desegregated schools. Now, was everyone happy? No, they were not, were they? The people in the Deep South were really unhappy with what happened. Where saw the most desegregation? Obviously, it'd be those in the North. What else could we think about? We could think about the fact that it took a long time to desegregate schools. There was such opposition in the South. Okay, and the most important element, in my view, for this particular question is the second order concepts. And in this question, it is sources B and C. So that means we are looking at sources. And there's 3 areas of knowledge that you need to study when you're looking at sources. That is content, provenance, and subject knowledge, or contextual knowledge. Okay, so our question of the day is an 8 marker. That means you need to spend 10 minutes writing 2 paragraphs. since this is a practice, before we even start writing and looking at how to get great marks, do you want to just have a look at source B and C right now and begin to analyse the content and provenance and think about highlighting quotations? So just press pause for a moment and begin analysing those two sources. I'll see you shortly. Okay, right, so I'm just going to start with source B, and I'm not going to do a great deal of analysis here as you're already exceptionally good at this, but I just want to remind you, here is the provenance, and here is the contents. Okay, the provenance is who made it, when was it made, and why. And obviously that applies all the way to source C. Okay, let's have a little look. So you should there have just analysed source B and C there to look at what it tells you about the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case. Alright, let's just have a little look at how to get full marks with this question. Okay, and to get full marks in this question, I'm going to use something that I refer to after a close friend called Jack. Judgment, analysis, and contextual knowledge. Okay? Right, so I'll just put in brackets what that means. Judgment, analysis. Rubbish. Contextual knowledge. Okay, this particular question has got 3 levels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all 3. Okay, so level 1. Okay, to get level 1 in this question, all you are doing is it's just a simple reason. To get level 1 for analysis in this question, it's a simple paraphrase. If you do it for both sources, that's 2 marks. And to get level 1 is there's no knowledge or no relevant knowledge. Looking at level 2, so again this would be 1 to 2 marks. This would be 3 to 5 marks. And what would be level 3, which we'll look at in a moment, would be 6 to 8 marks. Okay? Right, let's have a look at level 2 just for now. Alright? Level 2 for your judgment is a summary of the sources. For your analysis, that is 1 quote plus an inference. Alright, or a reference to the provenance. And then finally, for contextual knowledge, you might have some vague knowledge. Okay, and then level 3, it's again a summary of the sources. For judgment, analysis goes on to another level, so it's 2 quotes plus inferences. Inferences plus analysis of the provenance. And then finally, for your contextual knowledge, you could probably see where it's going here. That is just simple, relevant contextual knowledge. This is an absolutely lovely question to get full marks with. It's also very, very possible to get 3 to 4 marks out of this question just by not having any subject knowledge. Okay, so if you think that you open the exam paper, you don't know anything about the significance of Brown versus Topeka, well, if you've got a summary of both sources, 2 quotes and inferences, and provenance, you're probably going to get a 5, all right, out of 8, which isn't half bad. Obviously, we're going for 8 out of 8, so we need to make sure our knowledge is very relevant. But it's also, I've got a great trick for you. So I'm going to write down no knowledge. All right, so my tip to you is to steal knowledge from the interpretations. It's a great trick to use. Okay, right, so you've had a look at the sources, we've broken up the question, we've had a look at the success criteria. This is our first question of the day. We've got 3 more to do after this, but press pause, set a 10-minute timer, put all devices away, and have a go at analysing how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the significance of Brown versus Topeka case. Press pause, and I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back. So I'm hoping you've spent time there analysing sources A and B for an inquiry into the significance of Brown versus Topeka. I'm very conscious of my handwriting, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyse, I'm going to read out my answer, and I'm going to self-assess my own work. And as I'm doing mine, I would like you to self-assess your work as well. And just a polite reminder, we are going to use the acronym of JACK, Judgment, Analysis, Contextual Knowledge. So what I might do is I might just put a JACK. Okay? Right, let's just start with my first paragraph. One reason why source A is useful for an inquiry is because it shows how successful the outcome is. So here, all I've done is I've just summarised what I can see in source B. So that's my reason. Loads of students often struggle with this. But when you're struggling to start this question, just summarise what you could see. So there is a judgment mark. For example, in the source, I can see a fully integrated classroom with black and white students learning peacefully together. This suggests that the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling has been a success, and now black Americans can achieve and succeed in line with their white peers. Right, so what you can do, obviously this one's a picture, so there's no need for a quotation because there's no text, so I've just described what I can see. But again, you can see my content here. And then what you can do is you can see my inference. Now, loads of students really struggle with pictures, particularly when you need to think about your second inference. So what I've done is I've started in the middle, now I'm having a look at the background. I can also see white students listening as one black student shares his answer. This again reiterates the idea that the ruling has been successful. So again, there's my reference to the content. So I've said what I could see in the picture and I've implied my inference. It shows that it was successful. There's my inference again. Okay? Now ideally I want a different inference, but there's not really a second inference that's relevant to this one. Maybe you could talk about the quality of the schooling as it's a better quality building, meaning that they will get better results. Okay, right, so let's have a look at some subject knowledge. Now, I've just snuck in a little bit of subject knowledge here. Unlike the events of Little Rock Central High School in 1957. So what I've done is I've just snuck in a little bit of subject knowledge. So I'm going to put CK there. So, from my own knowledge, I love this phrase here. It's just such a great phrase to begin your development of your subject knowledge. From my own knowledge, I know that the Brown versus Topeka ruling desegregated education after Oliver Brown and the NAACP argued that segregated schools unfairly disadvantaged black students and made them feel inferior. So again, I've got CK there, loads of knowledge there, and loads of precise knowledge there. This led to the Supreme Court declaring it unconstitutional. So I've got maybe 1 or 2 sentences there demonstrating loads of subject knowledge. Okay, so you can see where I'm going here. So if I were to just go to my margin, here is my judgment. Okay, so I've just summarised what I can see. Here is my analysis, but specifically of the content. Okay, here is my subject knowledge. So what, I'm thinking about this as a tick box now. So what I need to do now is I need to have a look at my provenance. This source is a photograph from a national newspaper in 1954. So I've stated what it is, when it was made. This is useful as it demonstrates the significance, using the language of the question, of the event as it is being shared nationwide shortly after the ruling, with it being a photo. Oh, right, so there's some great analysis of the provenance. So I'm just going to write in provenance just along here. With it being a photo, it is hard to edit or change. However, right, so again, what I've done is I've stated the provenance and I've said why it makes the source useful. Now, this is where we get full marks. So, if you were to just stop there and you were to do that for the second source, you would probably get maybe 6 to 7 marks out of 8. Here we are, this is 8 out of 8, let me show you. However, it is taken in a school in the north, which would naturally be more accepting of desegregation, and it could be staged to make the school look good or unsuccessful, which limits its usefulness. So I've talked about the limitations. Now, if I were to just do that with one paragraph, it caps me at 5. So I'm hoping there that I've done it with both paragraphs. Let's have a look at my second paragraph. One reason why source C is useful is because it highlights the reluctancy and refusal to desegregate schools. Right, so again, what you can do is you can see my judgment. I have stated my summary. For example, in the source it says, now this is a written source, so it's easy to pull out quotations. It has planted hatred and suspicion where before there was friendship and understanding. Right, so there's my quote, as you can probably see. This suggests that the ruling has created a problem that did not exist before and has ruined the peaceful relationship between the races in these states. Here's the inference. Perfect. It also goes on to say, we shall seek to right this wrong, meaning that they intend to keep the schools segregated for, in their view, for the good of both races. So again, I've stated, there's my second quote, I'm just going to put a Q, and then there's my inference. Right, so again, I've stated my quote, I've summarised what it is with my judgment, I've put in a quote and an inference, a quote and an inference, so there's my analysis, but that's just of the content. Let's have a look at my subject knowledge. From my own knowledge, I know that the states in the Deep South, so again, there's my CK, and I've used that signature phrase, from my own knowledge, I know, refused to accept the ruling which led to confrontations like the Little Rock 9 crisis in 1957, the James Meredith case in 1962, which involved racism and violence. I also know that the ruling closed down some successful black schools. So again, I've got 2 facts, a little bit of precise facts in there, which again is perfect, but not necessarily mandatory. So there's my contextual knowledge. So there's my own knowledge there. So source B, let's have a look at my provenance, is a statement from the Southern Manifesto, signed by 100 members of Congress in 1956. This makes the source useful as it is written before the Little Rock 9 crisis, allowing us to see the causes of that event. And as a statement from 100 politicians, it shows the significance, again I've used the wording of the question, of the ruling with so many being against it. So again, you can probably see where I'm going here. If I didn't add in this last little sentence at the end, they'd probably cap me at 7. However, it does not show the views of normal people in the South, and as it comes from politicians, it could be something to make a big political statement and increase their profile. So here is my analysis of the provenance, and there's me talking about the limitations. So what I've done is if I just go straight back to here, and I'm focusing solely on level 3 here, there's no level 4 for this question. Have I got a summary of both sources? Yes, I have. Have I got 2 quotes and inferences? Yes, I have. Have I got provenance? Absolutely. I need to add in the limitations for 8 marks. Have I got relevant contextual knowledge? Absolutely. So that, ladies and gents, is an 8 out of an 8 question. Okay, so there's our starting point for paper 3. Let's have a look at the next question. So, study interpretations 1 and 2. They give different views about the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case. What is the main difference between these views? Okay, do you want to press pause and have a look at interpretations 1 and 2? And then we'll break up this question. Press pause, highlight some quotations. I'll see you shortly. Righto, welcome back. Okay, right. So, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time breaking down this question. The reason why is because it's very similar, so the focus remains the same. So again, here's the focus. Alright? Your second order concept is the interpretations. You cannot talk about the sources. Okay? And finally, our command phrase is what is the difference? This is a 4-mark question. So that means you're going to write down 1 paragraph and you're going to spend 5 minutes doing it. Okay? Now, this is the most important one now. Let me show you how to get 4 marks out of this one. This is a dead easy question to do. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down success criteria here. Okay? Right, first and foremost, what you need to do is you need to summarise interpretation 1. Then you need to add a quote. Then you need to say whereas. Or you can use another connective phrase. I misspelled it, that doesn't help. Whereas. So you can use another connective if you want, but whereas works well. And then you need to summarise interpretation 2. And then you need a quote. Dead easy. Absolutely easy, that one. And tell you what, as that's so easy, whilst we're here, what I'll do is I'll just have a look at 3C. So let me show you 3C, and then you could do both of them together. So let's have a look at 3C. So this is more challenging, this one. Okay? And the reason why it's a bit more challenging is because ideally what is happening now is the level of challenge is increasing over time. It's like a maths paper. Easy questions at the front, harder questions towards the back. Right? So I will break up this question this time. Let me grab my blue pen. Right, so first and foremost, our command phrase. And that is suggest one reason. And as you can imagine, all you need to do is just say why. Our focus, yet again, remains unchanged. It is the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case. However, what's really important about this one is that our second order concepts that is interpretations 1 and 2, but you can use the sources. So remember, you can use them. So let me show you how to get 4 marks on this. So again, this is a 4 marker, so it's just like the last one. You're going to do 1 paragraph. You're going to spend 5 minutes. Okay, let me show you how to get 4 marks on this one. Okay, so this is 3C. This is our success criteria. And what you're going to do is and this is before you start writing anything, is you are going to match the sources and interpretations. And that might be either in your mind, that might be a little code, or that might be literally just drawing lines between them. The second one is you're going to simply, this phrase will get you 2 marks. You need to say one reason why historians have different views is because they have different sources. Historians have different views because they use different sources. And that simple question, that simple sentence will get you 2 marks. But I don't care about 2, I care about 4. So let's go on to the next one. Right, so our next element is you need to explain which source interpretation 1 uses. I'm just going to put interp 1 uses and why. And same again, explain which source interpretation 2 uses and why. Okay, so 2 really easy questions there. If you are doing 3B, you're just simply summarising it with a quotation, whereas summarising interpretation 2 with a quotation. 3C, you match them up, say that they have different views because they use different sources, explain why, explain which one they use and why, explain which one they use and why. So that's 10 minutes. Again, press pause, put all your devices away, set a 10-minute timer. See you shortly. Okay, right, welcome back. So let's have a little look and let's self-assess our answers. So these 2 questions are the absolute dream. They're really easy. Right, so first and foremost, interpretation 1 suggests that the Brown versus Topeka case was a success for the civil rights movement. There's my first mark. I have accurately summarised interpretation 1. Let's go for my quotation. For example, it says their methods provided the foundations for later success of the civil rights movement. There's my second mark. Easy, easy peasy. Whereas interpretation 2 says that the ruling made life much worse for black Americans in the Deep South. There's my third mark. And then finally, there's my fourth mark. Easy question. So I've got 4 out of 4 there. And the reason why is I've met that criteria that we spoke about a moment ago. Tick, 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 tick. Easy. Right, let's go on to the next one. As I said, slightly harder this one. One reason why the authors have different views is because historians have put different weighting on different sources. Now, what I've written here is the same that what we wrote down a moment ago, but I just think I've just put it in a bit more of a more academic sense. So this phrase here is the same. Yes, they're using different sources. I've just used the phrase different weighting. It just sounds better. So one reason why the authors have different views is because historians put different weighting on different sources. Right, so there's 2 marks. Interpretation 1 has likely used source B as it shows a picture of an integrated school and the interpretation refers to Washington, which is where the source B is taken. Right, there's my third mark. Interpretation 2 will have used source C because it says we pledge ourselves to use all unlawful means to change the decision of the Supreme Court, which is supported by interpretation 2 when it refers to the White Citizens Council. There's my fourth mark. Now this is really important. You must include a quotation. Okay, and obviously source B is a picture, so I've described it. So you must include a reference to the contents or provenance of the sources. Okay, so that's what gets you the 4 out of 4. If you've just said interpretation 1 is use this, interpretation 2 is use this, you're only going to get 3 marks. Okay, all right, and then finally the big whammy. Okay, the hardest question on the paper. All right, and probably the hardest question on the entire paper. However, I've got a method and a technique that I'm going to show you that's going to get you 20 out of 20. Okay, right, so let's begin by again breaking this up. The focus hasn't changed and you could probably work out the interpretation at the second order concepts, but let me just talk you through it anyway. So again, our command phrase is how far do you agree? Okay, so again, just like all the questions where you have how far do you agree, you are creating an argument. And yes, it requires your opinion. Okay, so our focus again is about the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case. So I'm just going to leave focus for now because we spent a lot of time on that. But what I do want to dedicate a whole lot of time, and that is to the second order concepts. Okay, and that is about the interpretations. Okay? Now, this is really difficult, this, because you must create an argument about the interpretations. So that does not mean you say you agree with interpretation 1 because of this reason, but you disagree with it because of this reason. Here's a conclusion. What you are doing is you are evaluating the interpretations. This is something called AO3, and that is evaluation of interpretations. Okay? So you must include both. Okay? Alright? So again, your structure, so just to clarify, this is, again, this question, it has 4 spag marks. So it's actually 16 marks plus 4. Your spag marks, you'll get 1 for paragraphs, 1 for full sentences, 1 for good spelling and punctuation and so on, and you get 1 for your use of historical terminology. Alright? So I'm just going to assume that you're going to get 4 with that one, but what I do want to do is I just want to clarify something. This is the only question that you can spend 30 minutes writing it. Okay? So it's a 30-minute question. Alright? It's the hardest on the papers. Alright? I'm going to suggest that you structure it as having an intro, then you do interpretation. I'm going to start with interpretation 2 because it's in the question. So I'm going to start with maybe interp 2, then interp 1, then a conclusion. What you can do is, again, I'm just conscious of spag, is interpretation seems to be the world's longest word. So what you can do is when you first write it, you can put in brackets I1, and then you can refer to it from I1 after that moment. If you don't do that, you're going to lose a spag mark. Okay? So I'm going to suggest that just to save you writing out the word interpretation over and over again, you do that and make sure you write down interpretation 1 brackets I1, interpretation 2 brackets I2. Okay, let me show you the success criteria for this question. And again, it is dedicated to a dear friend. So I'm going to use Jack again. Okay, so again, that's judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge. All right, this has got 4 levels to it, but I'm not going to worry about level 1. What I am going to do is I'm just going to show you level 2, level 3, and level 4. Okay, and marks are spread out across these ones. And I'm going to do it sort of knowledge area by level. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the judgment. Okay, so for level 2, that's just simple. That is agree, disagree, conclusion. So that might be paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Okay? For level 3, what you need to do is you need to have an explained evaluation per para. And that, ladies and gents, is when you say, do you agree? At the end of each paragraph. And then finally, level 4, this is the hard bit, but actually it's harder because it's a bit of an English question, is you need to say how convincing is their arguments. And you'll struggle with this at first, but once you've worked out how to do it, it's the easiest thing to do. Okay, right, so so we've done the judgment for level 1, level 2, 3 and 4. Let's have a look at analysis. All right. So again, analysis. So in terms of our level 2, that's just simple 1 quote per paragraph. All right. It might come with an inference. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't always happen, but it might come with an inference. Okay. Right. And level 3 is 2 quotes plus inferences. Okay? And again, for level 4, it's two quotes again, plus inferences. Alright, so analysis is actually dead easy. Again, it's a very English question, this one. And then finally, contextual knowledge. So for level 2, you've just got simple 1 fact per para. Again, for level 3, that's 2 facts per para. And then for level 4, that is 2 precise facts per para. Okay? And again, level 4, it seems difficult to do, but it's actually really easy to do. What I'm going to offer you time now is I'm going to offer you either, if you are exceptionally confident, set yourself a half an hour timer and crack on. If you think this is really difficult at first, set yourself a 10-minute timer, have a go at starting your answer and look at my answer, and you can green pen as you go. So, I will see you shortly. Keep going. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, right. Welcome back. So, whether it be you've done 10 minutes, a half go because it's a tough question at first, or you've done a full half an hour, welcome back. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out my answer with my ugly handwriting, and again, I'm going to be using judgment, analysis, and contextual knowledge. I've left my highlighters in the classroom. I wish I'd have highlighted. Brought some back to highlight, but never mind. Let's have a little look. So, here's my introduction. Alright, and what this is, I'm just stating my opinion, and the reason why I do this is just in case I run out of time. Okay, so overall, I disagree with the view of Interpretation 2 about the significance of the Brown versus Topeka case, because in the long term, desegregating schools significantly improved the life chances of black Americans, although I do accept its arguments and its short-term consequences. So again, you know, that is not necessarily significant straight away, but what I've got is I've got a bit of judgment there. So I've provided my judgment. Okay? Right, let's have a look. Interpretation 2 suggests that the Brown versus Topeka case was significant because it led to the opposition of the opposition to the ruling in the Deep South and made the lives of black Americans worse. So you can see there, what I've done is I've just summarised. Okay? So I've just summarised, almost a bit like a source analysis question. So just summarise what it says. And you can see what I'm about to do is I'm going to go into the analysis of what it's saying. For example, it says, in the Deep South, open and complete opposition began as soon as the Supreme Court decision was announced. The use of open and complete implies that although they knew it was a legal requirement, authorities actively and publicly broke the law. Excellent. I should say broke. Right, okay, so there is my first quote plus inference. Right, so all I'm doing there is I'm just analysing the source. So that's just a bit of some analysis marks there. And again, I've put an inference, so there's some more analysis marks. Additionally, it goes on to say the Ku Klux Klan maintained a campaign of terror and violence which highlights the extremes that groups in the Deep South were willing to take to oppose integration. Right, so there's my second quote plus inference. Right, so you can see I'm going for level 4 here. I might already maybe in the knocking on the doors or in the realms of level 3, but let's have a quick look here. So now, ideally, I'm going for knowledge. And again, I've used that phrase. I know from my own knowledge that after the ruling, 450 laws were passed to try and prevent integration of schools. I also know that by 1957, 2.4 million black children were still being educated in segregated schools. This leads me to partially accept, right before I carry on with that sentence, there's my contextual knowledge. Alright, and as you could see, I've got 2 precise facts within it. Alright, So I've just said 2 precise facts. Let me have a look now. So what I need to do now is I need to do an explained evaluation. So presently, I am knocking on the door of maybe, so I've sort of ticked off here, I've ticked off here and here. I need to, but I'm only about here, alright? So I need to have a look at an explained evaluation, alright? Where am I? This leads me to partially accept the arguments as although in the long-term schools were integrated, there was a lot of short-term playing for black Americans. Right, so do you see that sentence there? What I've done there is I'm just saying, do you agree? Okay? And that, by doing that sentence, you are guaranteed level 3. Okay? So you'll notice, this is a how useful question. Then I say, do you agree? If you do that, you've got level 3. You've got 12 out of 16 if you do that across all the paragraphs. Alright? What I now want to do is I want to show you how convincing it is to get your full marks. Okay? Right, so let me show you. Although I find the author's use of the phrase began as soon as. So what I'm doing is I'm now picking out phrases and saying whether I find it true or not. Unconvincing, as it does not recognise the 300,000 black children attending newly integrated schools. Right, so I've used the word unconvincing, and I've just sort of picked out language and said whether I agree with it or not. Although its reference to white opposition does not include. Does not. Oh, there's another grammatical error. Includes the raised awareness created by the ruling and its opposition, which is why its arguments. I accept its arguments, but find it overall unconvincing. So again, this is level 4, and I'm just saying what is convincing or not. And by convincing, I mean, is it accurate? Okay? Because he has missed out the 300,000 black children attending new schools. He has missed out the support nationwide for the Brown versus Topeka case. So I've done paragraph 1 about... I've done paragraph 1 with my introduction. Paragraph 2 about my analysis of interpretation 2. Let's have a look at interpretation 1. Alternatively, interpretation 1 states that the ruling was a success. So again, I've just done a summary. For example, it says the verdict gave Southern black people a belief that American political system, meaning that it empowered black Americans to seek out change and challenge segregation. It also goes on to say their methods provided the foundations for later successes in the movement, meaning that peaceful and legal challenge used by the NAACP could be used to win other Supreme Court rulings like the Brown versus Bowder versus Gale. So again, there's 2 quotations plus inferences. Right? Yeah. Hopefully you can see where I'm going here. I know, so I'm bringing in my own knowledge. CK. I know that within a year, 723 school districts in the north and the border states had desegregated, and that these schools received a better funding, meaning outcomes for black Americans gradually improved. I also know that the case was covered in national news and raised awareness for other injustices facing black Americans. So again, there's my contextual knowledge, and I've got 2 facts, and I've snuck in a precise fact there as well. This leads me to overall agree with interpretation 2, with the interpretation, as it highlights the long-term successes of the case in terms of the civil rights movement and the lives of the black Americans. So again, there I've done is I've said, do you agree? And why? Let's have a look at my level 4. However, there are some parts I find less convincing, and I'm using this word here, convincing. For example, it refers to the success of the methods used by the NAACP, but doesn't recognise how membership dropped after the ruling, suggesting that they weren't entirely successful. Moreover, it describes Washington as being in the Deep South, which I find is unconvincing, as it is more a border state and would likely have less extreme racist views. So again, there's my level 4 bit there. is convincing or unconvincing? What is good or bad about their argument? Okay, and then finally, to conclude, I still overall agree with the view of Interpretation 1 as it empathises the long-term successes of the ruling, leading to better outcomes and a winning formula for the NAACP and MLK, although I do appreciate the views of Interpretation 2, which shows the immense resistance to the ruling in the Deep South and uses and I accept the arguments about the legal and non-legal attempts to overturn the ruling. So if I just go back to this, have I 2 quotes and inferences? Yes, I have in both of them. Have I got 2 precise facts? Yes, I have. Have I mentioned what's convincing about their argument? Yes, I have with both interpretations. So in which case then I'm going to mark myself down for that final sentence, because not even I can determine what that is. Alright, so I'm going to put +3, but I'm going to give myself 16 out of 16, making it 19 out of 20. Fairly good stuff, really hard question. Remember, it's simple, this question. You say 2 quotes and inferences per paragraph, 2 precise facts per paragraph, and you simply say, do you agree with it? Yes or no? How convincing is their argument? Okay? Right, thank you very much for your time. Absolute mammoth session today. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.